It's an honor to be here, and kudos to all my fellow RCA members who did a Herculean job with all of these virtual events. And I am proud to be a part of it. And congratulations to all the fabulous folks at KDKA on your wonderful achievements. Well, in these trying times, I think we're all looking for constants in our lives. And for me, that would be working with youth. It's always challenging, exciting, and always rewarding. And so what I did was I reverted to my 3S philosophy. The first being sharing, and that's obviously what I'm doing with all of you now, in the hopes that by hearing about our youth activities, one of you will be inspired to do something similar with a young person. And now you know you have me as a resource, and you can always contact me for any help or support that you might need with your youth effort. The second S is for showcasing, and that's what we will be doing shortly with the young achiever presenter we have here today. I get my young presenters to come to different venues that I participate in so that they get the networking experience and they get the opportunity to do presentations about what they find is fun technically in radio. And the third S is support. We support these youngsters not only when they're in their teen years and they appear with me at different conventions and forums, but we support them when they're choosing technical colleges, when they are getting involved with job applications in the wireless industry and so on. So we offer a very wide range of support to our RCA Young Achievers. Now, to date, we have 141 RCA Young Achievers, and many of them stay in touch with me. Through the years, I have invited some of them to participate in the technical symposium that we have annually at RCA. The very first young achiever who ever gave a presentation at our technical symposium was Austin Schaller, KD0 FAA. And he was 17 years old when he gave a fabulous presentation for us. Now, he has a fascinating history with RCA, which I will share with you when we meet again in person next year, hopefully. What I will share with you today, though, is that he is now 26 years old, a graduate from Le Tourneau University, and has been working at Ball Aerospace in Colorado as an RF microwave design engineer for over 2 years. What I would like to share with you today is 2 weeks ago, he sent me a letter letting me know about all his achievements. And there's something special in there that I want to share with you that he wrote. My role has mainly been RF electronics hardware design, but I've also contributed embedded firmware and software. So it has expanded into a very multidisciplined position that I have. All of the preparation involved for your Dayton Youth Forum, Carole, and the RCA Technical Symposium that you featured me at has allowed me to communicate technical aspects very well. And that has helped me immensely through the years. Thank you to RCA. So I hope you share my pride in that. In other words, we follow them through right into their careers, and I just find that to be very rewarding. Now, obviously, things were different this year. I usually regale you at this point with stories about all the fabulous conventions we've attended and all the forums, the youth forums that I've featured our young achievers at. Obviously, things have been a little bit different. But in August, the recent QSO Today Ham Expo provided yet another opportunity to feature our best and brightest technically creative young hams. It was an honor to be invited to chair and organize the Youth Forum at this historic event. I had 7 of our fabulous RCA young achievers who each delivered incredible presentations and then participated along with me in a live Zoom Q&A session. In my introduction to the Youth Forum, I gave a brief summary of how I taught Introduction to Amateur Radio for almost 30 years to 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And I then invited the audience members to contact me for tips and advice on how to recruit and how to retain young people in ham radio, as well as how to convince an administrator to allow a radio program in a school. And the follow-up inquiries that we got were terrific. Well, I want to share with you the topics that each of these RCA young presenters gave so that you can be equally proud of them with me. The first presenter that we had was Jack McElroy, KM4ZIA, who was 12 years old. His topic was high-flying kids with HAB, high altitude balloons. He demonstrated how to motivate young people into ham radio through demonstrations with the balloons, and then explained about the weather and radio factors. Jack explained about the math, different types of balloons, and other essentials that you would have to learn so that kids can enjoy this awesome part of the hobby. That was a very, very popular presentation. The next speaker I had was Frankie Bonte, KE8HPA, who you are soon going to have the delightful experience of hearing from. But Frankie was my next presenter, and she spoke about citizen science, HAM-SCI, and the Personal Space Weather Station project. She described and displayed the Personal Space Weather Station being developed by HAM-SCI. She explained the cooperation that exists between scientists and amateur radio operators. The involvement of young people in technologies like radio will help to continue the work of citizen scientists. Then next I had in the presentation at the Youth Forum, the Wagner family. These were 3 siblings, Bernadette, 14, Ben was 12 years old, and Agnes was 10 years old. And their topic was 5 fun things for youth to do with ham radio. These siblings showed how they use ham radio in their everyday lives and all the fun activities that they participate in on the air. This is an all-ham family that really enjoys ham radio. Next up, I had 16-year-old Audrey McElroy, KM4BUN. She spoke about getting girls involved in STEM, specifically through amateur radio. Now, this is one of my favorite topics. As we move into a more high-tech world, Audrey believes, as I do, that young people, and females in particular, will be playing a huge role with their contributions in science and in math. Audrey is a great role model for all young hams, but especially for our young ladies. And then my last presenter was Connor Black, W4IPC. Connor is the 2020 winner of a contest that I run annually, sponsored by both RCA and QCWA, called the Young Ham Lends a Hand contest. And he won due to his extraordinary efforts and volunteerism. This is a contest I run every year to motivate and encourage young people to get involved with the service and volunteerism part of amateur radio, and for them to give back to their community or to the hobby itself. His topic as my last presenter was how to be a great contester. He spoke about how young hams can get involved with contesting and how to improve their skills, and how to get into doing remote contesting. All of my young presenters enjoyed being part of this virtual experience, and they were excited to participate in the hour-long Zoom Q&A after the Youth Forum. I was particularly impressed and pleased with the number of inquiries that I received about recruitment and retention ideas for youth and ham radio. And in fact, I was contacted by hams from around the world, including a high school science teacher from Australia, who as recently as last week is in touch with me, and we are sharing curriculum ideas over the topic of high altitude ballooning, which he is now including in his program at his school. And we are both sharing ideas with each other. And he was inspired by the presentation at the QSO Today Expo in the Youth Forum that Jack McElroy did on high altitude ballooning. So not only did we get many requests and suggestions about how to incorporate a radio program in a school setting, but in addition to that, I do believe we got 2 new members who did sign up for RCA to get involved with the youth initiatives that we are sponsoring. So you can see that despite these trying times, we are still managing to share, showcase, and to support our youth. And so that's my update for this year, and I would be most happy to answer any questions or field any comments that you may have, but this is where my heart is, and it works even in these trying times. Thank you.
Carole, thank you so much. And I've worked with you now for so many years. I don't even need to give you the 5-minute warning.
It's internalized.
You are such a superstar, and thank you so much for all the lives that you touch. Your dedication to the Radio Club of America is just stellar, and I'm thrilled to be a part of your team. So Nathaniel, do you have any questions for Carole Perry?
Well, I don't see any coming up so far.
Okay, if you have any questions, just put them in the Q&A or in the chat. And maybe as an
as we start, Carole, how do you find all of these young people?
Well, the truth is, at this point, they kind of find me. The youth forums that we do at the major conventions, such as the Dayton Hamvention and Hamcation in Orlando and Huntsville, Alabama. And as I always like to quote Tim, where he says, when you're dealing with the youngsters, the beauty is that the secret sauce is that they will inspire other teenagers to get involved with radio as well. But the fact is that, to my mind, getting involved in a school is, of course, the way to get it in, where it gets the most exposure to the young teenagers. But at this point, actually, it's word of mouth, to answer your question, Nathaniel. Hams, such as anybody on this fabulous event all day today, can always contact me to sponsor or to recommend that I interview and then get in touch with a youngster who would be interested in giving a presentation with me.
And so we're on here today with Carole Perry. She's part of the RCA Youth Initiative. She is a director and fascinating lady who has inspired so many people. Dave, do you have a question for Carole?
Yeah, Carole, if you know or have a rough idea, how many schools in the U.S. or internationally or both have youth programs?
Well, through the years, many of them contact me, as I always invite anybody in earshot who will stand still long enough for me to throw out the invitation to use me as a resource if they are considering doing it. At any one given time through the years, there are up to, that I've personally gotten involved with, 200 schools. I'm sure there are many, many more. And the beauty of it is when you're including amateur radio in your school, there are so many different ways of bringing it into the school. You may not be lucky enough to do it the way I did, where it was a mandatory program that you had to go through in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade, but it could be a club, it could be an elective, it could be after school. And again, usually it's close to the 200 number of the teachers who actually get in touch with me at any given point, worldwide at this point.
Thank you, Carole. Nathaniel, another question.
Sure, Carole. John Fasella wonders, do you know how many of the youth go into wireless or electronics, or how many of them go into something completely different?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. Of the many things I keep track of, I can't give you an exact percentage of that, but so many of the youngsters that I personally deal with through our youth activities program at RCA remain in touch with me. I'm really good at job application filling out. And many of the ham radio youngsters that I deal with go into the wireless industry, and many of them have made their initial contacts through the RCA Technical Symposium that they've been lucky enough to get selected for, or through the different venues where we showcase them. So many is the answer of those youngsters do go on into the wireless industry.
And Dave, another question for Carole.
Yeah, another one from John. What makes amateur radio interesting to youth, given the proliferation of cell phones now?
The famous, why do I need a radio when I have a cell phone? Well, you wouldn't have your cell phone if it wasn't for amateur radio. Again, in a discussion we were having before, I always look to motivate the age demographic that I'm speaking with. And always, whatever it is you're trying to show somebody, motivate them to get involved with, what's in it for me? So when I'm speaking to the teenage demographic, it's here's how you can have fun, here's how you can communicate in a whole different way, here's how you can meet some of the most fascinating people in the world. And I, being a self-proclaimed astronaut groupie, always emphasize that part of how we're lucky enough to be in communications with people that the average person does not necessarily get a chance to speak and communicate with.
Nathaniel, another question for Carole Perry.
Sure, John is full of great questions today. What are some of the issues in getting females interested in STEM?
Oh, well, at the forums that I do, always, always, at least one young lady will be featured, as you're going to have the pleasure of seeing soon. But there are, in fact, so many young ladies who are in amateur radio. And when I introduce them to it in the class and tell them all the fun things we'll be doing, I anticipate and always would say to them, now, girls, you're sitting there probably thinking, sounds great, but this isn't for me. I'm a girl. But I said, well, who are you going to say that to? Me? So it's very important that we also encourage not only our Elmers in amateur radio, but Elmiras as well. And experience 30 years in the classroom, I am here to tell you the young ladies do just as well as the boys do.
So Dave, last question for Carole Perry.
So Mark Lukowski heard there was a story. How did you get involved in ham radio, Carole?
Well, okay. Back in the late 70s, I worked at an electronics manufacturing company. And during lunch hour, all the engineers would always be on their ham radios that they had set up. And they would allow me to get on and speak. And one day I said, this is just so much fun. I am going to get an FCC license. And their response, late 1970s, was, it is fun, but you'll never get a license because women just don't do this. So they might as well have thrown the gauntlet down on the floor.
So there's the dare.
And so on and so forth.
So more recently, Carole, and we're going to end on this note, more recently you had a TSA experience at the Dayton Hamvention. Just briefly describe what happened.
Yes, I was coming home from Hamvention. I was at the Dayton airport coming through the TSA pre-approval line, and I was wearing a fabulous jacket that the folks at Dara had given me. And when the agent got it, he kept looking at my ticket and then looking at my jacket and looking back at the ticket. And then he said, we're not able to give you pre-approval status today. And I said, with all due respect, why not? And he said, well, I see you're wearing a radio jacket. He said, and I don't know. He says, but I don't believe that women do that. So that was the second time. Finally, everybody behind me, all the hams online, were joking and putting their hands up and cheering me on. And eventually he did let me go through.
I'm surprised the hams didn't carry him out.
That's crazy.
Always undaunted, we move on.
That's it. Well, Carole, again, thanks for everything you do. And if you want to get in touch with Carole Perry, she's easy to find on qrz.com. Just look under WB2MGP, and Carole will be happy to answer questions or help you. And so, Carole, please introduce our next speaker.
Okay, amongst the things I'm so honored to be doing today is to introduce the next young lady you will have the pleasure of listening to. This is Frankie Bonte, KE8HPA, who is a college freshman at Case Western University. She enjoys being involved in science research and ham radio, and is studying engineering and dance. In school, she is a cheerleader and is involved in the Society of Women Engineers. In addition to working with the citizen science organization, HAMSci, she completed a capstone project on 5G antenna sighting and is involved in the WWV Doppler shift study with the team from W8EDU, which is Case's Amateur Radio Club. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this year's RCA Young Achiever presentation.